So I'd like to our Wednesday webinar session. Today's focus is on how to create new assessment type of test in GradeXpert to allow teachers results for those tests over a number of terms or a number of years. And GradeXpert is assessment setup. What you can see here is the standard GradeXpert screen, and by the way, this version 7 as well. If anyone has any questions or recommendations for areas to cover during the webinar, please feel free just to type it in the chat box. If it's a in order to get into the settings screen. And the settings screen in GradeXpert, as many of you already know, is the control panel or nerve center where you can make adjustments to virtually any type of setting in GradeXpert. So it's very are the first two tabs of the settings screen. The list of assessments that we've got set up already, and the list of result types, the second tab, that allow us to set up scoring methods or ways that teachers will be able to enter data and how they're allowed to enter data. So you can see each assessment in GradeXpert is given a name and at least one result type. Now, a result type in GradeXpert is a single score. So, for example, let's look at a PAT comprehension test. So, PAT assessments are fairly well used across the base. We're saying our PAT test is recorded with putting in a scale score, and along with the scale score to put in the STAY9 result, which is just a measurement out of 9 that is a normalized or a standardized result that makes it very easy to compare. You can see that the scale score and STAY9 are different result types that we have attached to the PAT comprehension test. If I go further down my list, you can see we've got other tests where plan assessments have come up, for example, and they just have a single result type, which is the score. Each test in GradeXpert can have up to 10 different result types, which means if you have a test with 10 different result types, teachers will be asked to enter 10 different types of scores. Need as many as 10, but it is quite flexible in how you set that up. Along with the result types that teachers can enter, you can also set up calculated result types, which are values that are derived from data that teachers enter. For example, you may set up a calculated result type called percentage, and what that means is that GradeXpert will work out in a short while. Okay, if anyone notices any problems with their screen or problems with their voice, please just let us know and we'll address that straight away. But everything's looking pretty stable and good at the moment. We'll continue. Let's say we needed to set up a new test, and we'll call it reading test, reading 10 paragraphs, for example. So we want to set up a reading 10 paragraphs test, and we want to mark that in a number of different ways. Firstly, we want to record how many paragraphs the student read out of 10. Then we want another result sorry, there was just a message that said they can't see movement on the screen. I've been doing a bit of talking before I've been doing movement. Can everyone else see the movement on the screen? Okay, so it might have been that I was just flapping my gums a bit too long without actually showing anything, so I'll keep going. So before you can create that new reading 10 paragraphs test of available result types. So I'm going to click on the result types tab, and you can see here that we've got a number of predefined result types and other result types that have been entered. These are reusable result types. So for example, I have a raw score value here. I can attach this result type, this raw score, to any number of different tests. I don't need to create a brand new raw score result type for each test if I'm You can override those, and I'll show you that in a moment. But let's say for our reading 10 paragraphs test, we want to know, well, we've said paragraphs they've read. So that result type doesn't exist. I don't want to use a raw score. I'll be 0 to 10. So I'm just going to create a new result type by clicking the Add button. You can see it opens up a new row at the bottom of the screen. And I'm just going to call this a short description, paras read. And in the long description, I'll say paragraphs read. The short description is usually what's used on space considerations, and the long description is used in many other areas. So we've given this result type a description or a name, and what we want to do. How that happens, the checkboxes alongside the name of the result type let us specify the type of information we're allowing to go in. So all we need to do is click the Allow Numbers option. What we're allowed to put in, we can use the last column that says Default Values to put in values that we've asked teachers, or we're going to ask teachers to put in. So if I click on the dots there, you can see here we've got a minimum result, a maximum result. So in this case, I'm going to put in 10. And we don't need any decimal points, but you could set that up with decimal points over there. So we've now created our paragraphs. The other item we wanted was the teacher judgment of the student's progress. So I'm looking here, I don't see anything that says progress. Actually, there is one that says progress. We've already got one set up. This progress is going to be a drop-down list, and drop-down lists for teachers to enter results. You've lost audio, let me check. Can you hear okay now? Is that come back? All right, everything should be back to normal now. Fantastic. Progress result type. You can see here we've ticked the box that says select from list, which means we're going to ask teachers to select and the list value is set up in the same default value screen. So if I click on the button in the default values box, you'll see it comes up with our list items. Now these look like they're matched to the for effort and class behavior, but we're going to reuse it for the test that we're going to set up. Along with the result that you can set up, needs attention and so on. In fact, I'm just going to add another result type onto this. I'm just going to call it NA, not applicable. And if this, I want it to come out as a 0. And we can then also set up colors that these. So for example, needs attention, they can go in, well, let's make it a darker red. If it's acceptable, we make it lighter. If it's good, we'll make it orange. If it's very good, we'll make it light green. If it's excellent, we'll make it dark green. And if it's not applicable, we'll just make it, say, blue. And what that means is that when teachers select an item from these drop-down lists, they'll be able to look at them as very good with a light green background. So that's a very easy way to set up colors for items that you have in a list. Now, before you can these new result types that we've created, such as paragraphs read, to the new test, you need to save the result types that we've just created. So you just click the Save button in the assessment settings screen, and now we're going to create the new result type. Create the new assessment. So clicking on the Assessments tab allows us to move our assessments around and create new ones. An assessment that will fall under the literacy assessment group. New assessment, you need to place it into an assessment group or a heading. So you can see we've got literacy assessments all grouped together. We have numeracy assessment groups, numeracy assessments grouped together. We have our NAPLAN items, some Oswald's items. You can have A to E tests. You can create any number of groups or headings by clicking the Add Header. Or group, you can have any number of different tests. So if I wanted to add a new test, I just click on any test within the literacy group or even on the literacy group itself, and I click the Add button. And you'll see a new row has opened up. It's put in a default description. And at this point, I can now give it my name. So instead of new assessment, I'm going to call this reading 10 paragraphs. So that's the new test that I've decided to implement at the school. Is attach those 3 result types that I've chosen for this type of test. One, I want it to be accuracy. So all I did was click in the result box, and then I can choose the result type I want for my result type 1 from this predefined list of result types that we've seen before. So in this case, I want it to be accuracy. At this point, it is using the default values for that accuracy result type that we set up in this result type screen. And the default values in this case is asking teachers to enter a value from 0 to 100 with the right one to use, considering this is a percentage that. If you wanted to change the allowed values just for this new test, reading 10 paragraphs, you would just untick use result type default values, and then you can change your options. So just for this test, you're asking teachers to put in a whole between 0 and 100. And you can see that the first result type column now for reading 10 paragraphs contains the accuracy percentage type. Now we move on to the second result type, and our second result type actually read. So again, you click on the result type 2 cell, and there's our paragraphs read that we've set up. And the default values that we set up earlier, 0 to 10, are retained. And we click OK. And then we have a third result type for this test, which was the teacher judgment of their progress. So we'll simply select progress from the list. And you can see again, the default values are the one we're using with needs attention, acceptable, and so on. What we could have done as well is we could have said, all right, don't use the default values. I don't like these. I want something that says, just for my test, it says poor, and then good, and then excellent. And I want these others removed. So I just delete that row, delete that row, delete that row. And now my drop-down list will just have these three options. I'll change poor to red, good to light green, and very good to dark green. So this doesn't affect the default values that I've set up for progress generally. This is just for this assessment. Instead of the values that I've set up in a drop-down list, I'm going to now use these values. So this is an override to the default values that have been set. You have a number of other options. You can put in an extended description for this assessment that will assessment or how it's marked. So this is just a text box that says whatever you need. So let's say this assessment measures each student's ability to read 10 paragraphs of text without errors. Just for example. Then when teachers are entering results, they can always call up the extended description to get a bit more information. As I move across, you can see we've got result types that we can set up to 10. You can put benchmarks in, which I'm not, but I'll come back to. The access level, what access level is required to access this assessment. If this is an assessment that you'll be able to get to, you just change that, say, to 3. I'm going to change it back to 0 for now, because these other two columns are where we can, for each test, choose if we want teachers to be able to add an attachment. And attachments in GradeXpert work in a very similar way to attaching If this isn't ticked, teachers will not be able to add attachments to this test. So you only really need to tick it for assessments that you have student sample examples of artwork. And if you click allow attachments, when the teachers are entering the results for those tests, they'll have the additional ability to add an attachment or to add a document to that test so that it can be opened up and viewed. And the Store Attachments button tells GradeXpert to store a copy. In GradeXpert version 8, this is limited to a maximum of a 2 megabyte attachment at a time. That's to try and save space in the database and also to have attachments that are larger than 2 megabytes, leave that unticked, because that will mean GradeXpert stores the copy of the attachment in the GradeXpert database. That means that when you open the assessment where the database doesn't have a copy, GradeXpert will look on your school server in the location that you specified initially for that attachment. This column, the maximum length of comments, is reasonably self-explanatory. For each test you can have, or for each test result, you can have result comments that I wanted it limited to 150 characters or 800 characters, or just leave it at 0 so there's no limit. And we won't worry about the last column, which is student report item. So we've gone through almost every column here. The assessment code is one that we haven't touched on yet, and that is a way to almost shortcut the import. I'm going to put a code in here called R10P, for example, reading 10 paragraphs. And that means that when I am trying to import, instead of trying to identify the test by the word literacy reading 10 paragraphs, which opens it up to typos and so on, you can just use the assessment code to identify this test. So that's the main reason for using an assessment code. So just to summarize here, we've set up an assessment, we've given it a description and a code, and we've set up 3 result types. And we've also said that we are allowing attachments over here. Now, as soon as you save this new test, teachers can start entering results for that test. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click on our student and results screen. I know that we're not focusing on entering data today, but just to see how that test then comes up for data entry, that reading 10 paragraphs, let's say our classroom teacher has now completed the assessment and now they want to put in results just for their class. So I'm just going to select a single class here instead of all my year 3s. I'll just select one year 3 class. And the easiest way to enter ad hoc results for any test in GradeXpert, you just use your enter results. If I click on that button, I'm asked to choose the test that I want to enter results for. So in this case, reading 10 paragraphs. And what you'll notice straight away is that the 3 columns that we're asking teachers to enter results for are shown in the. So before we start entering data, we simply put in a way to identify the set of results by date. So we can put in the date of test or the month, term, week, or semester. And you can simply start typing in your information here. So for Charlotte, it's a 80% accuracy. She read 7 paragraphs, and her progress, our judgment of her progress is good. And you can see the color coding has shown that result in green. And you simply enter the results for the next student. Accuracy 90%, paragraphs read 9, and her progress here is excellent. So what we've done now is we've set up the test and we've started entering data for those tests. Let's say teachers have come back to you after a while and said, look, we would rather put paragraphs read in accuracy. It's easier for us to first type in the number of paragraphs they've read and then the accuracy. That's easily done. I'm just going to save these results for the meantime, because I want to come back and edit that in a moment. So if we go back into our settings screen, this is where the accuracy and paragraphs read needs to be switched around. So we can add, remove, or change the order of the result types very easily. And the result type 1 is the default result that is graphed. So if you click on any item, graph it, it will automatically graph result type 1. So the raw score here, the range from, the scale score, book level, and so on. And it means that if you're not happy with what's being graphed by default, you can just change the order of these result types. It doesn't delete viewed and entered. So I want to move paragraphs read to the left. So I click on paragraphs read and then I right click to bring up my context menu. And this gives me a few different options. Add assessment, delete assessment, and so on. In this case, I just want to move my result type left. And if I click that, you'll see that these have now been switched around. And when I go back to my list of students and put that information in, you'll see that the columns have been switched around. And now for our teachers who have asked for that, it's much easier and more intuitive to enter the data in that format. So we enter results in our list, reading 10 paragraphs. And of course that didn't come up like I wanted. Let's just see what comes up there in the settings screen. Just make sure. No, that didn't save. The result type left. The accuracy is still correct. I just want to see that the paragraphs read saves correctly. Let's go back into our students and results and just make sure it's done at this time. So for our 3JS class, enter results in list. Reading 10 paragraphs is the test. You can see paragraphs read is now displayed ahead of accuracy. Let's call up our previous set of results that we put in. And now we can carry on entering our information. Okay, does anyone have any questions up to this point, or is this all reasonably clear? Okay, well, I may continue with a couple of other areas of setting up some of the assessments. One of the most useful things is the ability to color. So what we can do there is we can say, all right, the paragraphs read. Let's say if kids have read below 3 paragraphs, we want that to show up in red. Between 3 and 7, we'll show it up in orange, and anything above 7 will show it up in red. Just so that when we're looking at a big list of data, the color level. So what we're going to do, and I'll do it just for this paragraph's read result type, I'll go into the settings and I'm going to use this conditional color formatting option. So I'll just go back to using those values and I tick conditional color formatting, which means based on certain conditions, colors are going to be displayed according to those values. So it's a very straightforward if-then test. So if paragraphs read, and then you've got an operator less than, equal to, and so on. If it's less than 4, then the color is red, indicating it's a bit low. I'll add a second test there. Let's say if the paragraphs read is greater than and equal to 4, and paragraphs read is less than 8. For 5, 6, and 7, it will show up in orange. And I'll create a third one that says if paragraphs read is greater than or equal to 8, so anything from 8 to 10 will come up in green. So it's only the second column that I've had to fill out both of the operator options. If you're not filling anything out here, this second check will not be run. So this is going to say, when it displays the result, if the value that the teacher typed in for paragraphs read is less than 4, show it in dark red. If it's between 4 and 7, show it up in orange, and anything 8 will show up in green. This is a message just telling us that we've already got some results stored, but that's fine because we're not actually changing the minimum or maximum. We're just changing some of the color coding. When we go into our students and results screen now and enter that data for those students, we'll see how those colors come up. Enter those results, reading 10 paragraphs. And I'm actually just going to bring up the previous set of results that I put in. There were only a few of them. But you can see that the paragraphs read colors are immediately formatted as well. So if I go 1, 6, 9, so as I'm putting in the data, you can see all these colors are changing according to what our conditional color has been set up as. And as with almost every column in GradeXpert, you can sort it quite easily. If I sort it by paragraphs read, you can see our lowest scores are shown at the top now, and the dark reds are grouped together, followed by 4, 5, 6s, and 7s, and then 8s and 9s in green. Okay. Let's say for this assessment, we actually want to put in a calculated result type. We want to convert paragraphs read from a number out of 10 to So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new result type called the calculated result type, because GradeXpert is going to do the work for the teacher. So calculated result types are set up on the assessments screen, not on the result type screen, because they relate just to this test. So if I click in result type 4, it's none of these result types that I want to use. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom of the list, you'll see there's a calculated option. And if I click on calculated option, you get a few more options here on how to set up calculated result type. So I'm just going to give this a short description. Now this is just for the reading 10 paragraphs assessment. I'm going to give it a short description of, let's say, paragraphs percentage. And I'll call it percentage paragraphs read. And we've got 4 options when we're designing our calculated result types. You can add up result types within that test. So you can say result type 1 plus result type 2 plus result type 3. You could then also say the average. So if a test has, say, 3 sections in, the average of those 3 sections by using this option. Convert is what we're going to use here. We convert a result type that's been put in by a teacher to a percentage out of 100. And you can modify that percentage out of 100 to something out of, say, 30 if it's a weighted test and it's only counting 30% of their final mark. The last option is an evaluate and convert. And this allows us to do things like, if the accuracy is less than 50%, then give the student for this result type a D. We could then continue to say if the accuracy is between 50 and accuracy is less than or equal to 70, then give them a C. So these are ways to use your evaluation list to set up a calculated result type for them. But in our example here, we're just going to convert paragraphs read to a percentage out of 100 and call it percentage paragraphs read. There you go. Let's say we want to put that right next to paragraphs read. I'm just going to right-click, move it left, right-click, move result type left, because we want to type in the paragraphs read, immediately have the calculation performed, and then type in accuracy and progress. So let's see how that looks on our data entry screen. Okay, so we're bringing up our year 3 class. We'll enter results in a list. I'll use my reading 10 paragraphs. And you can see my paragraph percentage that says calculated. I can't actually type anything in there, but nothing comes in because obviously that's all worked out for us. So if I put paragraphs read here of say 8, sorry, let me just set up a date. If I put in 8, you'll see it immediately works out the percentage, and then I can type in other information. So they read 80% of the paragraphs, but they're only 50% accurate. You can see as I'm going, the percentages are calculated accordingly. In fact, if I load up my previous set of results, you'll see the percentages are recalculated for me immediately as I'm viewing those results. So calculated result types are always worked out on the fly. They're not saved in the student history. They're made visible when you're viewing these results and recalculated as soon as you make a change. Okay, let me go back to our settings screen. There are a couple of little shortcuts that I'll show you now as well. Let's say you have another test similar to this one that's called test, but it is scored exactly the same way. It's not necessary to recreate the batch. You can just right-click on the assessment name and choose the option that says duplicate this assessment. And there you go. It's copied everything, save for the assessment code, into a new row with all the same settings as before. So I'm now just going to edit this description. So we're reading 20 paragraphs. I'll change the code to R20p. Let's see what the extended description looks like. So 15 paragraphs. Now in this case, paragraphs read is not actually out of 10. For this test, it's out of 15. So this is how we can differentiate our similar tests that have got different raw scores or different minimums and maximums. Oh, sorry, we said at 15, didn't we? Not 20. So reading 15 paragraphs. The other thing to remember that the order of every item in these lists, whether they're assessments or indicators or teacher names, whatever you've got there, is the same order that it will be presented to staff for using. Your staff use this accelerated reader assessment more often than anything. Instead of them having to scroll down this list to get to accelerated reader, you can just move it up. Just by clicking this blue up arrow key. And that means that the accelerated reader will be the and in the list of assessments to choose from. So you can move that up and down. And on this list of assessments, you can also collapse each grouping under its header. So if I click next to literacy, you'll see all the literacy assessments are hidden. If I then click on the plus, they're shown. If we wanted to see just our headings, we can click this collapse button so that everything is collapsed under its own heading. And here you can see that we can open up individual groups of assessments to see just the items that we're interested in. Questions come up when you move assessments up the list. Does that change everyone's settings or just your own? The answer is it changes it. So if you put this assessment, for example, running records up there, the next time so this is a global setting. In fact, everything in the settings screen is global, which means it affects everybody as soon as you've made the change. The other thing that you can do is move whole groups of assessments. Let's say you wanted your NAPLAN results to be shown further down the list. I'm just going to highlight the NAPLAN heading and click down. And you can see it's now moved it below my Ausvals, and if I click down again, it's moved it below work habits. So instead of moving each one individually into a different group in a different order, I've just highlighted the heading and moved that up and down, and it drags all the items within that heading up and down with it as well. So that's a very easy way to move around your assessment lists. Okay, so another couple of things that I'd like to show you is a bit more information on the calculated result types. Calculated result type, where we're going to work on the accuracy that the teacher has put in for this reading 10 paragraphs, and we want to convert that percentage . So what we're going to do here is add in a fifth result type, which is a calculated result type. So remember, the accuracy is a percentage. Let's just double check that. Accuracy as a percentage is from 0 to 100. So that's nice and easy, nice round number. So on the fifth result type for reading 10 paragraphs, which is now our new one, again, I'm going to come down to the calculated result types. Now I'm going to call this, let's call it A to E. Now this isn't a sum or average or conversion, it's this option, evaluate and convert result. Because we want to evaluate a result type that's been entered. So what we do is, again, it's the if-then question. So I'm going to say if the accuracy is less than, say, 30, so less than 30%. I'm not going to test anything else on this line. Then the final result is an E. And I want that to come up in a red. I then want another test. So if it's not less than 30, it's then going to go to the next row and test that. So let's say if it's greater than and equal to 30, and that accuracy is less than and equal to, let's say, 60, and that's a D. Well, that's perhaps a bit harsh. Let's say if it's 50. So between 30 and 50 is a D, and that will come up in a lighter red. And we simply continue these calculations. If it's greater than and equal to 51 in this case, and less than and equal to, let's say, 70, there will be a C, which will show up in, that was the color I selected, in the blue. We'll add a fourth line to check. So if it's greater than or equal to 71, less than or equal to, say, 85, we'll give them a B. and we'll show the B in the lighter green. And the final line, if it's grade 86. And we don't need to do another check here. So I'll press the delete button, because anything greater than 86 or 85, we don't need a further check on, because you can't actually enter anything over 100. And that's going to be an A. And you can put any text you want in this final result. It can be words, it could be below expected level, anything you want. So that A to E result, as it's a calculated result type, again, will be worked out on the fly as the accuracy percentage is put in by the teacher. So to show you what we mean there, we'll go to Students and Results. Load up our Year 3 students. Again, enter our results in our list, reading 10 paragraphs. And now you can see we have 6 result types, 2 of which are calculated. So let me just bring up that previous set of results that we've already entered. So you can see the B and A are calculated already. So I'm just going to put in different values here. So teachers haven't had to do any work to work out that A to E result, because as a data the teachers enter into a meaningful and hopefully standardized. Okay, so just to recap, I'll show you that a new test. You basically click on an assessment group, click the add button, and let's put in this new one that's called my new reading test. You choose how it's going to be scored. You need a minimum of at least 1 result type. So I'm going to score this as a raw score out of 57 and save. So in about 4 or 5 clicks, I've created a brand new assessment called my new reading test. That is a raw score, and that's the only value that we're going to ask teachers to enter. And as soon as the saving is completed, teachers will be able to call up their class and enter data for that test. And that test is available to virtually everyone across the school, even the same test for different year levels. There's my new reading test. We'll put in a date and just start typing the raw score. Yep, 66 is too high. Thank you for telling me. And that is how easy it is to create a new test, along with all the other options around the test, such as types that may not exist. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong button. We were on our settings screen. Okay, as you can duplicate an assessment, you can also duplicate a result type. So just something to keep in mind if you have a result type with a large number of items in a drop-down list, for example. Let's look at this one, MI level. So these are the different items that we can pick from a table, a drop-down list. And keep in mind that when you're putting in items to select from a drop-down list, we can't graph these very easily because we don't know what an X is or a minus is or the word all is. So you've got the option in a drop-down list to give each value, each word or symbol or text value, an equivalent numeric value to graph. So if I look at my letter score, here's an example of a result type where we've got A through E, And if the student achieved an A, we're going to graph a value of 5 on our graph and descending, so that you can quite easily see an E as a low bar and an A as as the tallest bar on a graph. So very easy to convert a result that teachers select from a drop-down list to a numeric that can be graphed. So if you wanted to duplicate this, same as you duplicate an assessment, you just right-click and say duplicate this result type. And now it's given it a description with an additional number on it to differentiate it, but the result types are all still in there. So by duplicating result types, you save a bit of time if you're using it for different assessments. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? What you can do is, if you've ends, feel free to email them through to us. Keep in mind as well that the GradeXpert email address for support is in the top corner of each screen. You can just click on that to send us an email. Our contact number is there as well. And should you require remote support, which means we connect to your computer and take control of it to, or even for training, we can put that in there quite easily. Another question, will benchmarks be covered in another webinar? They will be covered. I don't know if they'll be in a webinar, but we'll set them up in one of our involved than we want to do for this session, so we will certainly make a plan to make sure those are covered in additional webinars or training videos. All right, everybody, well, we'll end it there. I'd like to thank everybody for your time and your